everyone, this is Anna from Savvy Cat Realty, and today I'm going to talk to you about working in Portugal. I will be covering both remote work and finding a job in Portugal. And for those of you who don't know, Savvy Cat Realty is a relocation and investment agency that helps expats move to Portugal. We work with both rentals and purchases, and we very much work from a lifestyle and sustainability perspective, which means that we work personally with each one of our customers to understand their needs and match them properly. And we also care a lot about economical and sustainability and getting our clients settled in Portugal in a way that is beneficial for both them and the local communities. So if this is something that appeals to you, feel free to check our website in www.savvycatrealty.com. So today's topic is working in Portugal. And I generally advise people who move to Portugal to come with their own income, because finding a job in Portugal is not the easiest thing. And you generally are able to make a lot more money if you work remotely, depending of course of where you are coming from. But if you have that possibility, that is a very good choice here in Portugal. And one of the reasons is because we have very good internet speed. So the average speed in the first trimester of 2023 in Portugal, and this is data gathered from one of those measuring websites, and it gathered data from 283 of the 301 locations in Portugal. And the average velocity in the first trimester of 2023 was 132 megabytes per second, while in the last trimester of 2023 was 164 megabytes per second. So as you can see, you will be able to find very good connection and generally work very well in basically all of the country. The only places where you may have an issue is on the more isolated locations on the interior, where the main concern is whether or not you will have fiber going through. But we do have a very good coverage of fiber in the whole country, so the likelihood is that you will be able to find a home with very good internet connection. So that of course is very compatible with working remotely. Another thing that is very positive about working remotely in Portugal is that we have been showing a growing ecosystem of tech companies and generally startups. So of course this is more prominent in the big cities like Porto and Aveiro, but cities like Porto and Lisbon, but cities like Braga and Aveiro are also very now known for the entrepreneurship and tech ecosystems that have been developing. So those can also be a good bet on this regard and are a lot more affordable than Porto and Lisbon. So there is also a growing availability of shared workspaces. The more and more popular the co-working spaces are becoming a thing, and many of them are actually sold out. So that also leads to the fact that you will find a very international community in Portugal, especially in the big cities, of course. It is already an extremely popular destination for digital workers, so it will be fairly easy to meet like-minded people and to find spaces to network and work together with other people. On top of that, Portugal also has the incentive to this kind of situation, that is the digital nomad visa, that it actually requires a minimum income of 2,800 euros. That is about 4 times the minimum wage in Portugal. However, it does and it also asks for a lot of information about our company, about the company you work for. We do have a video explaining this visa in more detail, so feel free to check it out. Overall, it is the same process as a D7 or the other types of visas, and it's not that complicated. So honestly, it can be a very good choice to come and work remotely from Portugal, and I have a lot of clients who do exactly that. On top of that, if you also like to just move around and explore different locations, we do have a very good public transport network, especially in the coastal areas. If you go more towards the interior, the same thing cannot be said. The public transport on the interior is actually rather terrible. But on the further coastal half of the country, so at least half of the country has a very good public transport network, which is decent, a lot better than many countries, a lot worse than some, but still positive, I would say. And now to the second part of this topic, which is finding work in Portugal. As I said, finding work in Portugal may not be the easiest thing at all, so it's generally advisable to look for work prior to coming to Portugal, or to ideally come with a job that allows you to work remotely. However, if it is not a choice, I will be exposing here the general conditions and situation in Portugal regarding work. So our current minimum wage in 2023, it's 830 euros before tax. And we have a 6.6% rate of unemployment, which is probably not very accurate because our government has a bunch of strategies to reduce these numbers. Like if you are doing a professional course, you don't count as unemployed and stuff like that. So the actual number is probably higher than this. And that plus the minimum wage and the cost of living in Portugal makes for a not very attractive cocktail when it comes to actually working here. There are, of course, jobs that you can have a good quality of life and there are demand for, but they are generally very specialized jobs in tech areas and engineering areas, medical fields. Overall, if you have a very specialized field, it will be easier to find a well-paying job, but it's not like it's going to be widely available either way. And if you speak multiple languages, it also is an advantage, as there are a number of telemarketing and call center companies that work in Portugal. Do keep in mind that most of these companies, they work with with contracts that are not permanent, so with temporary contracts, and they do not offer that much stability in that regard, but they do tend to pay decent wages, and like I was saying, if you speak multiple languages, it can be an interesting option. On top of that, there are good things and bad things about working in Portugal. So one of the good things is that you actually have 13 holidays. So that's a lot of paid holidays, and it's nice for being an employee. The other thing is that a lot of people complain about the conditions of work, but as an employer, what I can tell you is that the employees are extremely protected in Portugal. And what happens in most cases is that most Portuguese people are not aware of the law, and this actually has the opposite effect that it is intended. So what happens is, because the employees are so overprotected in the Portuguese laws, the companies are actually put off from offering permanent and good employment conditions because it puts them in a lot of risk. So it is a huge risk for a company to hire a new employee. If that person doesn't perform well, it's a pain to get that solved, and it costs a lot of money. Of course, if a bad performer worker also always costs money, but in Portugal it's particularly awful. And that leads to the fact that, especially in lower positions, most companies will not be willing to offer good working conditions and long-term contracts because it's just not worth the risk. So companies are generally more inclined to offer short-term contracts or temporary contracts and that sort of thing. In many cases, they may not be legal, but then again, that's a whole other situation. And well, this overall ends up being bad for everyone in the market, but it just is what it is. Like I was saying, in more specialized and higher positions, it will be more likely that the companies will be willing to take that risk, also because it's very much a supply and demand situation. While there is probably not that much supply, so they just have to offer good conditions if they want to keep the good workers there. So this is overall the work situation in Portugal. As I was saying, the conclusion is it's great to be a remote worker in Portugal, especially if you come with a wage from a country with higher wages. If you come to work in Portugal, be very careful and be sure to screen things and do interviews and have more or less a secure position prior to coming. And generally, I also don't really advise coming on a work visa unless it is a very specific and safe situation where you know you will be staying long term in that company and that company will make the investment in you. Otherwise, it can be a risk because if you stop working for that company, you also lose your work visa. With the D2 digital nomad visa, the situation is similar, but I do believe you have a time frame to replace your contracts, and it does have the advantage that because you are not in the Portuguese system with a Portuguese contract, you don't really get flagged if your contract gets terminated. If you get terminated in Portugal, then that information is sent to the public services and they know that you have been terminated, so you are automatically on the red. While if you are a remote worker that is employed in a different country, there is no cross of information, so you do have a lot more margin to work with. So that is another thing to consider. From a legal standpoint, if you are working for another country in Portugal, the most likely scenario is that you will be receiving in that country and then transferring the funds to Portugal. However, in a scenario where that company is hiring you in Portugal, you will probably be registered as self-employed with recibos verdes. That is what we call here what translated means green receipts. Basically, it's like working for yourself. And there are a number of conditions to green receipt. So generally, if you are working for just one company, that is not legal. And that company will have to become present in Portugal and hire the person as an employee, although they usually can get away with it for like 6 months to a year. And yes, generally that's how things work. I believe I covered most things, but if you do have any other questions that I didn't cover, feel free to reach out. I would also love to hear your opinion about working in Portugal, if you've been remote working, if you've been on the co-working spaces, how your experience has been on that. I would be very curious to see the responses. And of course, I come here every week to give new updates, so feel free to subscribe to our channel. We always talk about useful things for people moving to Portugal and living in Portugal. And if you do think our services are appealing to you, feel free to reach out to us on our website at www.savvycatrealty.com or directly to contact@savvycatrealty.com. So I hope this was useful, and I will see you all next week. Bye.